In today's video, I'm going to go through a few tips on how not to be robbed whilst travelling, whether that's in South America, Asia or Europe. These are just generally useful tips. I'm going to do that by going through my security footage of when I was robbed at gunpoint in South America, and then after that, just a few more tips on how to avoid being robbed. So let's get into it. For the first part of this video, we're going to be analysing the security footage from when we got robbed in Colombia. Now, if you haven't seen that video, we got robbed in Cali in Colombia, and I'd suggest you go and watch it because overall the video is a good video. Now, getting into the video, before I even play the video, I'm going to point out point number one on the list of how not to get robbed in Colombia, and that is the time. So you can see here, it's 5 to 9 at night, which already increases your chance of being robbed massively because most robberies will happen at night time, and that's regardless of whatever country you're in. Crime is more prevalent at night. And I'm not saying don't go out at night, because I went out at night, I was out alone at night, and I was fine 99% of the time, but it only does take that one time for you to get robbed. If possible, take an Uber wherever you're going, or make sure you're in a big group. But that won't always work because, as you see here, there are 3 of us, so you'd think that we would be a deterrent as it is, 3 lads, but apparently not, no. So I'm going to let this play a little bit further, and I'm going to stop it here. For point number 2, the second point, I think, is probably obvious, and you probably don't need me to say, but it's this right here. Being on phones, because being on your phone, you're showing off what they can rob, and it is literally glaring, it's shining. It's like a shining light of, here, come rob me. So this is why it's point number 2. And they have a saying in Colombia, and maybe it's used in all of Latin America, but it's no da papaya, or no des papaya, which translates to don't give papaya. And papaya is a fruit, but it means like don't give sugar, don't give them something to rob. And right here, we're giving them papaya, we're showing them that we have a phone, you can come and rob it. So ideally, if you're walking around at night, have your phone in your pocket, don't have any jewellery on, don't be walking around in expensive clothes because you're just going to be given papaya. Now, I'm not saying if we'd have had our phones away, then we wouldn't have got robbed, because we still could have got robbed, but there's a chance we might not have lost our phones because we could have just given cash, and I'll move on to that point a little bit later. Now, I'm just going to rewind it so that we can play it through again to get on to point number 3. This is point number 3. As you can see, I'm looking at Simon. Simon is looking at me. And then Victor is looking at his phone. Not a single one of us is looking forward at this light here coming towards us with 2 guys on the motorbike. You might be thinking, oh, well, they would have robbed you regardless of whether you were paying attention, but that's not true. A lot of the time, just being aware of your surroundings and seeing things before they happen can actually prevent it happening in the first place. For example, we were 20 meters away from our hostel. We seen 2 guys on a motorbike 20 meters ahead. We potentially could have ran back to our hostel and got in the gate before we got robbed. But more than likely, we wouldn't have, because although we would have seen it as a potential threat, we probably wouldn't have ran because it wasn't an immediate threat. So we wouldn't have reacted. But by making sure that we seen them coming and them knowing that we knew they were coming, they might have drove past. Because robbing 3 men who potentially know that you might be robbing them is a lot harder than robbing 3 men that you catch off guard with a gun. And you can see it happen right here. They're not paying attention, talking. Oh, we stop, stumbling around because we've been caught off guard. We don't know what's happening. This guy right here has got a gun in our face, and he is his getaway driver. So just by walking with confidence and with your head up and being aware of what's around you can be enough to deter them to keep on driving, because they want to rob you as easily as possible. So more than likely they're just going to drive by and catch the next guy who's not paying attention. As this video plays out, we'll be coming to point number 4, which is not a point of how not to get robbed, but a point on how to not lose everything. So you can see he ran around the car because the gap here was very tight and he would have had to put the gun down, so he didn't want to put himself in danger. And he takes the phone. Then from me he takes cash, because I decided to only take cash out of my pocket even though I had a phone and credit cards in my pockets. But I decided not to because he doesn't know what I have. He can't see through clothing. So I'm not going to give him more than I need to give him. And that is point number 4. Give them the bare minimum. Because more often than not, they're not going to have time to stick around and search you and make sure that they've got everything. But you can't give them too little that it seems like it's not everything you've got. So in my case, I took all the cash I had and gave them that. And as we play it a little bit more, you can see here he asks for more, and I signal to him with the bottle that I had tucked under my arm, and I take it out. That I've got nothing left. That I've gave you everything, and as you see, he doesn't persist. Now, if they do persist, of course, give them everything because your phone is not worth your life. So if they are persistent, then just give them it. They're more likely just gonna flee because it's a robbery in public. They don't have time to search you. They need to get out there within 20-30 seconds because they don't want to be caught. Especially in places like Cali, they have neighborhood watches. We had a neighborhood watch just up the road, so they couldn't take the time. They had to be quick. And cash is also better for them than phones because phones are more likely to be locked to SIM cards too. It's going to be more awkward for them to get rid of, whereas cash, they can go and spend it straight away. Anyway, that's the video done. We've gone over the 4 points of what we done wrong in that video and how we probably could have prevented being robbed. So now I've got a few more points I just want to talk to you about. Before we get on to the last few points of how not to be robbed whilst travelling, I just want to remind you that you can go buy merch and support the channel over at www.explorelife.co.uk, where you can pick this Colombian tee up, where it's got the Colombian flag colours and the mantra keep exploring on a nice white top made from organic and recycled materials, so it's good for the planet and it looks good on you. Now let's carry on. Point number 5 of how not to be robbed in Colombia is not necessarily how not to be robbed, but how to potentially not get papaya and how not to maybe lose everything, and I touched on it in the video. So right now I'm wearing a bum bag, and you wouldn't have known I was wearing a bum bag underneath a hoodie because you just can't see it. So that's one of the points that I would suggest to people who are traveling is to buy a bum bag, but don't buy one of the big ones that people wear across the chest like this because you're just showing them where everything is. I know it's close to your body and it'll prevent pickpocketing, but it won't prevent robberies and muggings. So what I would suggest is getting a nice thin one like this. It's big enough that you can put your passport, your credit card, your phone in there and money, but not big enough that it can't go underneath clothing like so and just be hidden and out the way. Now if someone came up to me to rob me, I have cash in my pocket, here you go, here's the cash, done. But nothing, well obviously I've got AirPods in there, but apart from that, nothing else, nothing in my pockets, nothing to rob, because they're not going to come and search your body. So that is point number 5, get yourself a nice discreet bum bag that can be hidden under clothing, and this works under t-shirts too. If I pull this up, you can see, you can't really make that out, and when you're walking, you know, like your clothes are moving from a distance, they're not going to be able to make it out. Point number 6 will be to do with mobile phones. So I have a friend who also got robbed in Cali, and he didn't get robbed at gunpoint, he got pickpocketed. And the reason he got pickpocketed was because he went to a street party, and the street party is really fun. It's good to be at, it's a good experience. Everyone's salsering in the street. But what isn't a good idea is to leave your phone in your back pocket, because that is the most likely place for a pickpocket to take something from, because they're behind your back. Whereas if it's in your front pocket, it's a lot harder to take a phone from, or money, or a wallet, because they have to be in front of you where you're looking. This point is just so basic. Just keep valuables like your phone or your wallet in secure pockets, not in your back pocket where someone can just snatch it and run, and by the time you turn around, they're gone. Keep it in your front pocket or a zip pocket or a bum bag, because it makes it so much harder for pickpockets to rob you. And finally, we're on to point number 7, which unfortunately did happen to a few people that I met whilst travelling, and that is being drugged whilst drinking. Now, how does this happen? Well, it happens when you go drinking in bars. A lot of the time, it'll be a young girl who'll come over to you and express interest in you, when in fact, she's only interested in getting drugs into your drink so that she can rob you. So this point is actually more dangerous for guys, as it's a lot less common for girls. So how can you avoid getting drugged in a bar in South America? Well, the first advice I'd give you is never drink alone, because you put yourself at risk being alone, because you've got no one there to help you if something goes bad. Being in a group gives you that confidence that if you do get drugged, they'll spot it and they'll be able to take you home before you get robbed. And most of the people that I spoke to that did get drugged were drinking alone. The second piece of advice I'd give you is watch where your drink is being made. Make sure that the bartenders aren't putting anything in it, and make sure you see them opening and pouring the drinks. You want to always make sure your drink is covered. So if that's a beer bottle, maybe put a tissue over the top, and if it's a cup, do the same, or maybe a coaster, just something that they'll have to remove to get something in. And never ever leave a drink unattended, because that is when it's going to get spiked. And the last way you could stop being drugged is just don't drink. And I'm not saying don't go to bars, but if you're drinking a soft drink and you start to feel unwell, you'll be much more likely to notice it and deal with it than if you are drinking. Because if you're drinking, you might already be drunk, so you might not even notice, and it might be too late. Whereas if you're drinking Coke all night, or lemonade or Fanta, and you start to feel a bit weird, well, you know that it can't be the drink because you haven't drank anything, so you can't be drunk. It must be drugs. So you can get yourself out of that situation a lot easier. Anyway, that is the end of how not to be robbed whilst travelling. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was useful, and I want you to make sure that you put them into use if you do go travelling, especially in dangerous parts of the world, because this applies to not just South America, but it will apply to parts of Asia and Europe and other places that it's common to be robbed in. Now, as always, make sure you smash that like button, comment below if you found any of these useful, and as always, subscribe. And remember, keep exploring.